Hello, everyone. My name is Ulysses Velasquez, and I'm doing questions 3 and 4 for part 2. And I'm also working with Megan Vogel, who's awesome. So let's start with question number 3. We're going to talk about guppies. So it says explain the basics of Endler's guppy experiments and describe, don't just name, the details of the two selection pressures acting on the guppies. So in Endler's guppy experiment, he noticed that there was basically a stream where the guppies where they lived, and towards the head of the stream, he noticed that basically the amount of prey that were feeding on the guppies were less than towards the end. So as you reach the end of the stream or body of water that they lived in, the amount of prey increased. And so he noticed that it would be a good way to check how the selection changes over the course of the stream and how the guppies might change. And what he found was pretty interesting. And so there were actually, two selective pressures. And so I want to talk about the first, which would be natural selection, the survival of the guppies. So I'm going to utilize the screen share here so I can show you what we see. So here we have a guppy. So this would be the kind of guppy you would see at the beginning of the stream as described in the book. It's got lots of spots, lots of colors, and kind of a shine to it. This shine gives it away in the presence of other prey. And so you notice that this kind of shimmering that it has starts to dull as it reaches the latter parts of the body of water it was living in, which I believe was a stream. So in order to survive, they actually had to adapt and change the color that they were using. So if we look here, we see that this guppy has less spots. It's got more red on its body and less shimmer, just maybe this tiny zone here. So why red? We learned in the reading that a lot of the prey are actually red colorblind. And so the guppies, by natural selection, the ones with red were more likely to survive due to their ability to be camouflaged against the red color blindness of their prey. And so we see that this pressure affected the color of the guppies. Now, the second pressure is sexual selection. And so we know that we learned that the females actually prefer to have these more vibrant colors, these large spots. And so sexual selection favors having spots. And so this is why there isn't a more um, kind of what's the word I'm looking for. This isn't why all of the guppies look the same. There is a homogenizing effect of natural selection, but when it comes to sexual selection, it can counter this. And so that is why we see that the guppies retain some of their spots and their colors. And so that was Endler's experiment, and I think that that's a pretty incredible observation to make. So question number 4, I'm going to come back to you guys. What major changes occurred in finch mating behavior during the rainy season of 1983? So there were actually many changes that occur in the season of 1983 because of El Nino. There was actually a stronger storm fronts, more water, more rainfall, which led to a lot of changes. So first, we saw that there was a lot of reproduction between mates. They were having record numbers of offspring. I think I had mentioned that there were mates that had maybe, that had reproduced, even had 2 cycles of reproduction or more in one season. Second, we saw that there were more polygamous relationships, which I thought was interesting. They had mentioned that one female was seen to have up to 4 mates, which one right after another, which I thought was interesting because early in the reading they had been a little more selective, a little more monogamous. Third, the offspring were mating very early, which is very interesting. We had learned in the reading that even within the same season they were born, like 3 months or 4 months later, the offspring were already mating and having children. So there was this kind of snowballing effect that the rainy season was having on the reproduction of the finches. Fourth, the sexual selection by territory became less relevant. So this is also very interesting because when the finches were in the time of drought, it was the large males that had territory, they had supplies, they had resources. They were the ones that were having a greater opportunity to mate. But because resources were plentiful and territory was less important, there were even male finches that had no territory, or let's say a cactus, and they were still having opportunities to mate because of the amount of resources that were available. um, and let's see, I think I'm on number five. So fifth, there was a record number of births, but there were also record numbers of deaths, and this is because the harsh weathers led to fallen trees, destroyed nests, cold weather, sick finches, and so there were actually record numbers of deaths as well as births. And so these are five changes that occurred from, at least from what I gathered in the reading, during the rainy season of 1983. Thanks for being here. Also, check out Fleet Foxes. If you haven't listened to them, they're my favorite band.